My family mocked my job as a welder. Then my mother, who abandoned me at a grocery store, came back, and I found out why. My mother left me in the frozen food aisle of a Kroger when I was 2 years old. She told the responding officer she'd never seen me before in her life. It took a birth certificate, a DNA swab, and 11 days in the system before anyone believed I was actually hers. I know that's a hell of a way to start a post, but I need you to understand exactly what kind of person we're dealing with before I get to the part where she showed up at my shop 16 years later smiling like she'd just been on a business trip. I'm 24 now. I own a structural steel and metal fabrication company outside Columbus, Ohio. We do custom work for mid-size construction firms, ag equipment repair, and as of last year, a contract with the county to fabricate bridge support brackets. 22 employees. 7 figures in revenue. None of that matters to this story yet, but hold on to it, because it's going to matter a lot later. Growing up, none of my family knew what matters later looked like. All they saw was a kid who liked taking engines apart instead of doing homework, and later, a guy in a welding mask instead of a cap and gown. My Aunt Denise raised me. She's my mother's older sister, and she's the reason I'm alive and functional instead of a statistic. She and her husband Paul had been trying for kids for years with no luck, and when the state called asking if a relative could take a 2-year-old out of emergency foster placement, she didn't hesitate. She drove 4 hours that same night. My mother, Renee, pled guilty to child endangerment and served 14 months. I didn't know any of that as a kid. Denise didn't tell me the full story until I was 15, and even then she softened it. I grew up thinking my mom wasn't able to take care of me in some vague, sad way. I didn't know about the Kroger. I didn't know she looked a cop in the eye and said I wasn't hers. Denise and Paul had 2 biological kids of their own eventually. My cousins Tyler and Mackenzie, born when I was 6 and 8. And I want to be clear, Denise never once treated me differently than them. Not once, but everyone else in that family did. My grandfather, Denise and Renee's father, used to introduce me at holidays as Denise's boy instead of his grandson, like there was an asterisk on me. Tyler went to Ohio State for mechanical engineering. Mackenzie's in her 2nd year of nursing school, and me. I dropped out of the college track classes sophomore year and enrolled in the vocational welding program instead, and you'd have thought I announced I was joining a cult. He's going to weld fences for a living, I heard my grandfather say to my uncle at Thanksgiving when I was 17, not even bothering to lower his voice. Real shame. Kid's got Renee's blood in him, I guess, no ambition. That one stuck with me for years, not because it was true. Because it was the first time someone said out loud what I think a lot of them quietly believed, that whatever was wrong with my mother was somehow wrong with me too, baked in, inevitable. So I did what a lot of people in my position do. I got quiet, I got angry, and then I got obsessive about proving them wrong in the one language they'd eventually have to respect: money. I finished the welding program at 17, got certified in 3 different processes before I turned 19, and instead of taking a shop job, I started picking up side contracts, repairing fence lines and grain bins for local farmers who couldn't get a big company to show up for a small job. By 20, I had a used pickup, a trailer-mounted welder, and 4 regular clients. By 22, I'd incorporated. Last year, we signed the county bridge bracket contract, which is the kind of thing that gets written up in a regional trade paper nobody in my family reads. Which is exactly why what happened next caught me so off guard. At Mackenzie's nursing school graduation party, I was 23 at the time, my Uncle Paul's brother, who I'd met maybe twice, asked me what I did for work. I told him I ran a fabrication shop. He nodded politely and moved on to ask Tyler about his engineering internship, spent 10 minutes on it, then turned back to me and said, "So do you like weld go-karts?" And laughed like it was a joke we were both in on. I let it go. I always let it go. Denise's family was the only real family I had, and I wasn't going to blow it up over a comment from a guy I'd met twice. But it happened again 3 weeks later at my grandfather's birthday, when my grandfather told a table of relatives that Tyler was the one who's really going to do something, gesturing vaguely toward Tyler's diploma being framed in the other room, while I sat 6 feet away, having just made payroll for 22 people. I want to be honest with you, I never once corrected them. Never once said, actually, I cleared more last year than Tyler's starting engineering salary. Partly pride, partly spite. I wanted them to find out on their own, the way I'd found out what people really think of you when they think you're not listening. I didn't know I wouldn't have to wait long. Because 6 weeks after that birthday party, my mother called Denise's phone for the first time in 16 years. Denise told me before Renee ever got the chance to. She called me the same night, voice tight, and said, "Your mom wants to see you. I'm not telling you to do it, and I'm not telling you not to. But I think you should know what she said first." According to Denise, Renee had explained that she'd done a lot of healing, that she was remarried, that she wanted to make things right before more time passed. Denise, to her credit, was skeptical from the jump. She remembered the Kroger, she remembered the trial. She remembered visiting Renee twice in those 14 months, and watching her show zero remorse. But she also said something that stuck with me. People change or they don't, and only time tells you which. I just don't want you finding out the hard way. I agreed to meet her. Not because I forgave her, I didn't, and I still don't fully understand why I said yes, but because some part of me wanted to look her in the eye as an adult and see what I saw. Maybe I wanted her to see the shop. Maybe I wanted her to see what she missed. We met at a diner. She looked older than I expected, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Her husband, a guy named Craig, mid-50s, salesman energy radiating off him before he even opened his mouth, came with her for support, which felt off immediately. Though I couldn't have told you why yet. The conversation was strange. Renee cried at the right moments. She said the right words. I was sick. I wasn't in a place to be a mother. I think about that day every single morning. But something about it felt rehearsed, like she was hitting marks. Craig, meanwhile, kept steering the conversation toward my business, asking pointed questions dressed up as small talk. How many guys did I have working for me? Whether we owned our equipment or leased it, whether the county contract was locked in or up for renewal, I answered vaguely. Old instinct, maybe, from years of not wanting to hand my family ammunition. We met twice more over the next month. Each time, Craig came along. Each time, the questions about the business got a little less subtle. At the third meeting, he finally said it outright. He'd always wanted to get into the metal fabrication space, that he had some capital and some connections, and wouldn't it be something if we could keep it in the family, him coming on as a partner, or at minimum an investor. I told him I'd think about it. I did not think about it. I did something else instead. I have a friend, Marcus, who does accounting and light investigative work for a couple of the general contractors I work with, the kind of guy who runs a background check before signing anything bigger than 50 grand. I called him the next day and asked him to look into Craig, not because I suspected anything specific yet. Just because that persistent circling around my business numbers had put a bad taste in my mouth. What Marcus found took 11 days and answered every question I hadn't wanted to ask. Craig owned a small commercial landscaping supply company that had filed for Chapter 11 8 months earlier. He personally guaranteed 2 business loans totaling just under $310,000, and with the company gone under, those loans had converted to personal debt. There was a pending civil suit from a supplier he'd stiffed. And this is the part that actually made my stomach turn. There was a text message thread Marcus found through a public records request tied to the bankruptcy proceeding. Between Craig and a number registered to my mother, dated about 2 weeks before she first called Denise. I'm not going to pretend I feel great about how Marcus got that thread, but I'll tell you what it said because I think you need to hear it as badly as I did. Craig, you said he's loaded now. The steel thing, Renee. Denise said the county thing was a big deal. He'll want to reconnect eventually anyway. Might as well be now, Craig. If we play the guilt angle right, this basically writes itself. Worst case, he gives us a no. Play the guilt angle. 16 years of silence, and the door only opened once there was a number attached to me worth reconnecting over. I sat with that message for 3 days before I did anything. I won't lie to you and say I wasn't tempted to just go dark, block both numbers, and never think about either of them again. Denise, when I showed her, went quiet for a long time and then said, "I'm so sorry I let her back near you," which wasn't hers to apologize for, but I understood why she said it. but going dark felt like letting them win the last move. They'd spent 16 years assuming I was some struggling welder they could guilt trip into a payday, and I decided I wanted them to find out exactly how wrong they were in front of people. The county had scheduled a small ribbon-cutting event for the bridge bracket contract completion. A local news crew, the county commissioner, a couple of trade reporters, some of my crew, and Denise's family, who I'd invited months earlier before any of this started, back when it was just supposed to be a proud moment for the family that raised me. I hadn't planned to uninvite Renee and Craig. Instead, 3 days before the event, I called Renee and told her I'd been thinking about Craig's partnership idea, and that I wanted to discuss it properly, in person at the shop. The same day as the ribbon cutting, before the ceremony started. I didn't tell her why. I just made sure Marcus would be there with a recorder, and I made sure the timing put us walking out of that meeting directly into the middle of the event. Craig showed up practically salivating. He'd brought a folder, an actual folder, like he'd printed something up with a proposed equity split. 20% of my company, in exchange for what he called strategic capital and relationship management. Renee sat next to him, nodding along, playing the part of the proud, reconciled mother. I let him get about 4 minutes into his pitch. Then I put the printed text thread on the table between us. I'm not going to pretend I delivered some perfect, ice-cold speech. I was shaking, honestly. But I got out what I needed to, that I knew about the bankruptcy, that I knew about playing the guilt angle, that I knew this had never once been about me. And that I'd rather burn the company to the ground than hand a single % of it to either of them. Craig, to his credit, or maybe just because he's a salesman down to the bone, tried to spin it. Said it was out of context, said Renee genuinely wanted to reconnect, and he just happened to see an opportunity once he was already involved. Renee didn't even bother spinning it. She just said flat, "You don't understand how hard it is to start over with nothing at our age," which told me everything about what those 16 years of silence had actually been about on her end, too. I told them both to get out. And then, because I'd already committed to the timing, I walked outside, where the ribbon cutting had already started, where the county commissioner was mid-speech, where Denise, Paul, Tyler, Mackenzie, and half my crew were standing in front of a local news camera. Craig and Renee followed me out, still trying to talk, and the whole confrontation spilled into the parking lot in full view of the news crew, who, because local news loves nothing more than unscripted drama at an otherwise boring ribbon cutting, turned the camera on it. Craig actually raised his voice, called me ungrateful in front of everyone, which is a hell of a word to use at a man whose mother left him in a Kroger. Renee tried to grab my arm and I stepped back, and the reporter, sensing blood, asked if everything was okay. I didn't hold back. I told the reporter on camera who Renee was. What she did when I was 2. What Craig had been trying to get out of her showing back up. The clip that made it onto the 6 o'clock news that night wasn't long, maybe 40 seconds, but it was enough. Enough that Craig's remaining business contacts saw it. Enough that the civil suit against him picked up local attention it hadn't had before. Enough that my grandfather, standing right there in the parking lot, heard the county commissioner ask me a follow-up question about the 7-figure contract I'd just completed in front of Tyler. In front of everyone who'd spent years calling me the one with no ambition. Nobody said the go-kart joke again after that. It's been about 3 months since the ribbon cutting. Renee has called twice. I haven't answered either time, and I don't think I will, not out of spite anymore, just clarity. Some doors don't need slamming, they just need to stay closed. Craig's civil suit settled against him for an amount that, according to Marcus, wiped out what was left of his savings. I heard through the family grapevine, Denise still talks to a cousin who talks to Renee occasionally, that he and Renee split up about 6 weeks after everything went public. Apparently the Giltangle plan losing that badly was more strain than the marriage could survive. My grandfather hasn't apologized, not directly. I don't think he's built for that. But he stopped introducing me as Denise's boy. Small thing. Took 22 years and a viral parking lot argument to get there, but I'll take it. Tyler, of all people, texted me the week after asking if we ever take on interns, said he'd always thought fabrication was actually pretty interesting. Which, sure, buddy. Now that you've seen the number on the county contract. I said maybe, mostly to be polite. Mackenzie's been the most genuine about it, actually. She came by the shop last month just to see it, no ulterior motive. Just curious about the thing she'd never once asked about in 8 years of family gatherings. Denise is still Denise, the only person in this whole story who never once needed a viral moment to know exactly who I was and what I was worth. She cried at the ribbon cutting, actually, before any of the Renee stuff even started, just watching the commissioner shake my hand. That's the version of family showing up I actually needed, and it's the only one that was ever real. I don't know if I feel like I won anything exactly. It's not really that kind of story. But for the first time in 24 years, nobody in that family gets to act like they don't know exactly what I built, or exactly what it took to build it without a single one of them helping. Update 3 months later. Renee sent one more message, this time not a call, a letter, actually handwritten. Dropped off at the shop with the front desk girl since she knew I wouldn't answer the phone. I haven't opened it. Denise thinks I should eventually on my own timeline, not hers or Renee's. Craig, last I heard, moved out of state. I hope wherever he landed, guilt angle doesn't work twice.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating Reddit tales, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Archives of Reddit. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.